And we'll just see if this pushes to the live stream thing. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to give that one more shot. And if not, we're recording it and people will be able to check out the recording on YouTube after. You're on YouTube. I see it. Hey, great. Okay. Julia, then we are good to go. So I love it. Well, I'm excited then. We're going to get started. This is a special presentation, and this is kind of building on a few months of work. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce myself, but I actually want to thank you, put a thank you to the pioneers, so to speak, not only for the people who are joining this call today, maybe even for the first time when learning about Neon One or anything that we're doing here, but more importantly, to the people who've stuck with what this community represents. We launched this in right around the tail end of the first year of the pandemic, so late 2020. And we had a lot of energy and excitement. And as with those types of things, it was kind of like, well, what are we going to do next? And I remember early on in this process, because we said, look, you know, the community, taking and building community and managing community is a lot of work. You all know that, right? And so a few months ago, I had a call with two folks, Alicia and Kieran, who've been a long time supporters and leaders in the community that we have in Slack and beyond. And I told them that I was reading this great book, which is called The Cold Start Problem. It's over there. I moved it over there. And The Cold Start Problem is an interesting book, but it tells a story about Slack in of itself. And you may notice some weird interface changes with Slack. We're going to touch on that shortly. But Slack itself, interesting company. And they said, if you are trying to build a network, a community, how many people does it take to make a Slack group work? So take a guess what the book says. Take a guess what Slack figured out that all they needed to start, if you were going to set up a way for people to connect with each other and talk with each other, how many people does it take for it to be successful? Pop it into the chat if you want to take a guess. Now, Alicia knows the answer, so I won't delay it. 50. See, I thought it was higher too, Julia. Turns out it's only 3. It only takes 3 people to start something. So when we were kind of in these early ages and days, it would be like, okay, what are we doing in Slack, and just keep posting and stuff like that. And what was interesting is there was always at least 3 people engaging and talking and stuff like that. So I knew we were building something that had a kernel of excitement behind it. So what we're going to debut is taking those conversations, the interactions, the things that worked. In all honesty, Julia, your participation in Dream Big had a big influence on what we're doing here. In fact, the color scheme of the entire new community is drawn from the Dream Big imagery. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to debut how we're making this together. This is just the start of something really, really beautiful that we can all work with. Now, the reason that we are building this community, and it's regardless, I don't care if you're using Neon One technology or not. We have several people who are part of it that have nothing to do with using our products. And that's because there's a few important, larger trends that I think community will solve. So if you haven't read this book, The Generosity Crisis, I'm going to definitely recommend it. And I'm going to send some books out after this too for participants in today's webinar. I'm going to choose somebody afterwards. I'll let you know and reward you. And so The Generosity Crisis is a great book that's summarizing that we are lacking a lot of things that we've taken for granted in the nonprofit sector since the advent of the pandemic, especially that human connection. It's almost like we've overcorrected toward the digital side in many ways. And less people are trusting nonprofits, companies like Meta. If anybody's had to reconnect their Meta account, how easy has that been, right? There's no support Everything's disappeared for supporting organizations when it comes to things like that. There's a lot of for-profit companies that they don't understand the nonprofit space, and so they treat it like it's just another thing. And we have our own rules in the nonprofit sector. We have our own ways that people need to think about the work that we're doing here. And that's why it's also important that if we get trained that engaging with donors is the same as consumerism, we're gonna fail. We need our own rules, our own focus, our own path forward. And a big part of that is community. Now, we've been thinking through this problem, and we think that there's something we call generosity experience that is ultimately going to help coalesce all of these different problems. It's not technology problem, it's not a person problem, it's the fusion of those two things to make people trust your organization. Generosity experience is 3 basic principles: focus on people, not their money, focus on the experience of connecting with people, and then use technology to accelerate that. You can connect that through marketing, revenue, and impact data. Several of you are already doing this. We talk about this in the community already. Julia, whenever you're talking about, for instance, those great forms and the emails and optimizing that type of stuff, you're practicing this already. This vision is just putting a name on when we're doing things right at our organizations. But folks need better support and enablement around all these different pieces and how they work together. So that's why we are leaning into the community, because the vision and future of what the sector looks like is because of folks like you. It's because of the people who signed up for today's presentation and are going to start building the future together. Now, that seems like a tall order, especially for what amounts to, hey, sign up for some cool stuff and we'll give you some guidance and a good Slack community. It's a start. I think a lot of times when we think about these big problems, we get overwhelmed with having to think about the biggest possible solution. No, we're going to start with the most atomic solution. Remember, a Slack group only needs 3 people. We have hundreds of people who are already in that. And so if we can build from that and go beyond the Slack even too, that's the vision here. It's a good start. We're going to build on it, and we're going to build it together. Your feedback is critical here. So a lot of your feedback has gone into why we have the Slack channels that we do, why we have a community code of conduct, what types of presentations are we doing, and what types of topics are we focusing on. That's gone into what we're presenting to you today. So I want time for questions. This is a pretty quick showcase as well. I just want to explain what we've done and how you could start to participate starting tomorrow, because we're finalizing some emails, if I'm going to be honest. I don't want you to go in there yet. So the Connected Fundraisers community, slight adjustment if you've been following it along from the fundraising community, because we're trying to support people, and people benefit from community. So being able to connect and talk with other peers is important. The issue that we found is that a few different types of communities have taken a bit of a hit since the beginning of the pandemic, especially. I used to be a TechSoup Net Squared specifically organizer locally. They got rid of that during the pandemic. I was able to have and set up technology conversations with people in my community. That went away. I know that a lot of the other supporting communities, the Facebook groups, for instance, whenever I take a look at what's happening there, it's okay, but it's chaos. And almost every other day, simply somebody's posting a thing, what CRM should I use? And then it's just a bunch of salespeople diving in there trying to get business. I don't want to build that. And I don't want to build that where our team thinks it's okay to do that either. So we're going to touch on that, but that's not what we want either. We want to have a space where people can feel that they could share. But there's really good spaces that are starting to be around, especially some of the more consultant communities. The issue is that how the portability of that. A lot of them can be very tactical, might be a good digital marketing community, and you get some really solid insights there. What we try to do here, our vision is, how does this all work together? So what we're trying to build to solve those pain points, the tech communities not serving things, the more general purpose communities, especially the larger ones out there, kind of being mined for data by for-profit companies. And then the final part is connecting with peers, but in a way that is going to drive meaningful change, even potential cross-organizational collaboration. I want to actually see more nonprofits leading sessions and feeling confident that they can do that. Not everything should be led by a consultant or a tech company when it comes to conversations. So Alicia had a vision, for instance, to set up some roundtable discussions. We're going to be able to give a supportive structure if people have an idea. But you can't start with nothing. You can't say, okay, community, go. We have to give you a backbone support. So first, we're going to roll out some elements of coaching. One of the most requested and celebrated things when we launched the community was an email series that guided people through some critical end of the year questions. We're going to take that and turn it into a year-round thing with a special 12-part series that you get to go through, where we've personally curated this specific to the type of job that you are. When you go through the new onboarding experience that I'll talk about shortly, it'll assign you out and say, okay, you look like you're more attuned to fundraising questions or marketing questions or finance questions or just general purpose leadership. We have coaching, emails that'll go out. It also have prompt points. We're going to ask and say, hey, what do you think about this? What's your feedback? What did you do in this situation? We've had more and more people, especially since Dream Big, start to share that. Dream Big was a really good example of like collaboration. So let's take that idea and make it into a year-round thing. Because a lot of times you get all that energy after a big event, a conference, something like that, and it fizzles out. What happens if you could take that and it keeps going in a way that doesn't overwhelm you? And that's the last part, the connection part. Being able to have a space where people can connect with each other. I want to have it where we can have kind of those roundtable discussions and you can see each other. I want to have it where you could feel free to DM somebody if you had an idea and you wanted to connect with them. And everybody knows it's cool. How does this sound so far? I want to make sure that we're alive in the comments there before I shift into the brass tacks. Okay, this sounds great in theory, Tim. What does this actually mean? Super excited. Good. Awesome. I'm pretty excited too, because I think there's going to be a lot of things that are going to support you folks, especially at this critical time going into end of the year. But these are questions that are not going away. These are obstacles that all of us are facing. So to be able to continue to have a structured place, there's going to be a dedicated space on our website where you'll be able to find the monthly discussions. There's a dedicated tag called community. You'll be able to go to the page with all the other resources and where to find the FAQs that we've created, other types of items specific to the community. You'll also be able to find these in our standard webinar filter as well. So very, very clear distinction on a community conversation. So you know, okay, I'm going to be able to log in. Maybe I'll be expected to say something, share something, or maybe you even want to promote your own type of conversation through the community. We'll be able to have a space for that. Submit ideas, let's host it. The Slack community has been restructured. We've implemented codes of conduct on how the community overall will work. I'm going to do a dedicated discussion on that. But being able to clearly, we had a lot of unnecessary channels in there. We snipped a lot of that. Now it's very focused. Even the onboarding experience, you log in, get started, very clear video. I had to re-record it because Slack completely changed their visual design as of today, so that's funny. But other than that, it works the same. And so being able to continue to do that and lean into that. But imagine a world where it's like, okay, we have dedicated channels for discussion and somebody feels, hey, you know what? I have a vision for how this works. I want to be able to manage this. You could do it. You could do it. A lot of times whenever things like this are rolled out, it's kind of like, oh, well, thank you, tech company. How am I supposed to interact with this other than feeling like I'm just like, typing something? No, I want folks to feel real ownership over the direction of this. And that includes the community resources. So when we get into the sessions and topics that we've chosen, that was driven by you folks. Same with the research. The reason we had our big email report this year is because of you. That's what we focused on. And now we have a feeling of what we're going to gear up for next based off of what you have been telling us. And we're doing some really cool things behind the scenes to make it that you have even more control over this. There's so many times where there's either a resource, somebody even came into the community and said, I don't need another ebook. Give me some practical advice. That's only going to come through peer education. So that's what we're excited about. Now, in order to do this, we've studied and have plans on managing and executing and enforcing a community code of conduct. This has been posted in the community. If you've also interacted with, for instance, N10, this is adapted from the great code of conduct that they've developed over the years. And really, we've honed this with community leadership as well. But first and foremost, this is no matter what, when you join the community, we're not trying to sell you anything. We're trying to learn. We're trying to collaborate. We're trying to coach each other. So if you get unsolicited DMs from anybody about services, about products, and that includes Neon One staff, if there's some errant salesperson that isn't listening to the game plan here, let me know. Okay. But if you have a consultant go in there, if you have another nonprofit, we've had that where we had some international nonprofits come in and start soliciting people because they don't know. I let them know. That's my job. I'm the bad cop. That's not your job. I want you to feel okay here. And that's the thing. There's a list of rules to make sure, like, hey, this is the agreements that we have. We're agreeing that this is how we're going to treat each other, with respect, with honor, with dignity. Because we want to build trust. And in order to have trust, you need vulnerability. You have to feel like you can share. And not every space that we design is going to be conducive to that. We understand that. But we're going to not only try, we're going to continue to lean into this and learn. We're going to make mistakes. We know that too. So hold us accountable here. But this is important. This is like, it allows the fun to happen. So let's get into the fun. So the onboarding experience, we're going to have a new page. It's going to have a special quiz that I've been working on. And it's actually a little bit inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, where you could choose like a job class. And it assigns you. You're a leader, you're a fundraiser, you're a marketer, you're a finance-focused back-end person. Now, we're not going to label you. You're a multifaceted individual, but you have certain things that you care about more depending on your job. Even if you're wearing multiple hats, maybe you need a little bit more of a leg up on something. So this is what's going to go out when you join. This should be ready by tomorrow. There's a lot that went into this. We've curated tons of resources, and it's also going to start to engage and outline what exactly do we mean by generosity experience design as well, because it's a very transformative way to think about your work. It's not simply just saying focus on people. There's a science and an art to this that we're excited to share and build with you. As a emerging movement and view on the world in the nonprofit space, I'm inviting you to help shape this future with us. Tech companies like to come in and say, this is how it is, and this is what you need to focus. We've long not done that internally, and now we want to make sure that we're doing this whenever we're also educating and engaging with you folks too. We want to build this together. So the onboarding process will actually give us some information on what you care about. Okay, it looks like we have a lot more finance people onboarding than we realized. Great. So what's the deal with Slack? Do I have to use Slack to get anything about this? Because you might be sitting here and going, he's brought up Slack a few times. You don't have to use Slack in order to benefit from the community, but it's one of the easiest ways that you can connect with people in a meaningful, real-time way. So we've curated and kind of cleaned up the experience around Slack. So when you join, you can feel more comfortable participating. And this is also where I get to drop, for instance, data reports that are ungated, so you don't have to go through and give somebody an email if you don't want. So there's a lot of benefits toward joining the Slack, but it's not the only way that you can participate and be part of the community. It's just one of the more kind of highly engaging ways, but we also have sessions like this. They could be roundtable discussions where people are sharing their faces and discussing. They could be a more presentation style. The topics that we're planning for the rest of the year, and these should be going up, and you're going to start getting communications going out once these are spun up. And this is also where you're going to have a dedicated space to find these sessions. And we'll also develop a process together on if you want to make your own sessions, let's do it. And I want to figure out how to give you money for that too. I have a plan. Yes, for real. And so what we're doing here is things on artificial intelligence, legacy giving, and diversity, equity, inclusion. Megan proposed something on end of the year that I kind of got nerded out about and wanted to do a session on, like share your letters, let's rip them apart. Data trust and transparency, there's a special session that we actually sponsored with the Prindle Institute over in Indiana on ethics. So we were going to talk about data trust and transparency with a philosopher that will bring special to the community just for you, and board member engagement. Alicia, this is something that you brought up. So let's do it. Let's have a discussion by this end of the year. But I'd always love to make sure that there's a prominent nonprofit face or voice as part of these. Some of these early ones, we might have to prime the pump for you, but especially by next year, I want you to feel comfortable to say, hey, I have an idea. Okay, let's make it happen. That's what this is for. So what's next? We're almost done. We need help building it. Once this is done, I'm going to follow it with an email tomorrow. I just need my team to go, all the emails are set for the onboarding series. We just want to test it to make sure. But we're going to have this new experience. Even if you're already part of the Slack group, go through this. Go through this. Join the conversations in Slack. So the onboarding emails are going to have some prompts that we've asked, but I'm going to continue to put some prompt points. But if you want to have a discussion, if you want to pose a question, please do. Please do. And those conversations, we're going to have more of these. As you saw, we're going to have about 5 different sessions for the end of the year that we hope you can join us for. And then tell your friends about this. We want to build a honest to goodness movement on how we all work together. Okay? There's a lot of different things that we need to discuss. There's a lot of big questions that we have, but I think the most obvious thing is that community, real community, is going to drive the future here. And that's why I'm so excited to build it with you. So I want to thank you for your time, and we have a few minutes for some questions before I figure out if I'm properly shutting off the YouTube live stream or not. So any questions? I'll go ahead and stop my screen share and get a chat up. Awesome. Pioneers. Absolutely. And I know there's some other new faces. This might seem to new. We're not trying to make a click here either, right? So if this is brand new to you, we're pretty excited about this resource. This doesn't cost anything. You know, it's important because you need kind of those backbone organizations. This is what I've learned is yeah, you can, you know, join the Slack and stuff like that. What's really interesting that I learned the past year is you have these kind of backbone organizations like your local United Ways or maybe a co-working space or a company like ours. But if you ensure that others feel that they can come and gather and discuss, that's been the best. That's been the best. So we're going to try a digital version now, but I have plans. I have plans for next year. What other questions, folks? I'm not going to hold you hostage here either. If we're good, this is just a quick hit. So what's going to happen next is you'll get a follow-up email. If you're watching this recording, you'll be able to go to the website and just take the quiz. It's an onboarding welcome quiz, and then that'll get you a one bunch buddy assigned to you, either Genesis, Goldie, Victor, or Ace. And then they're going to be popping in. I'll be there here and there in the emails just for some other kind of larger support. But then we're going to start to have some dedicated conversations, both in Slack as well as through webinars and roundtables through Zoom as well. Other final thing, I want to make sure that you folks know that Generosity Exchange is coming up on October 11th and 12th. This is a free virtual conference that we put together. Alicia and I actually had a session to help get a lot of this movement. I would actually put it back to that session last year where we started the conversation. So this is a year in the making, and it started at that event in a meaningful way. So we hope you can join us for that. That doesn't cost anything either. That doesn't cost anything on your end. Cool. Well, hey, happy Monday, everyone. I'm still trying to figure out the best day of the week for this type of stuff. It's going to be a bit of an experiment for these, but thank you. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and we're so excited to start building this together. And I'm here. I'm going to be in Slack, and otherwise, you're gonna hear from me tomorrow, and let the games begin. And then you can also tell me, hey, optimize this email. This is something that I think you should do here too, right? So I'm here for the feedback. I'm here to make it better. Thank you very much, everyone. As your community manager, I suppose, I'm excited. I'm so excited for you to get into this, and we're so close. We're so close. So Don, Eli, Lauren, Bianca, thank you so much. Everybody have a great rest of the week. And if you are in the Slack, go ahead and post what person you think, what type of job you think you're going to get assigned. The leader, the fundraiser, the marketer, or the finance person. Which one do you think? Maybe pop in the Slack if you want to share that. But I'll post the different images that you might be. Okay. Thank you very much, folks. I'll talk to you soon.